Perfect. I just started the recording on my side too. So we've got that. And I sent you this morning, I know, I'm sorry, the questions and bio and all that. You got that? Perfect. Very, very. Specifically mental health. Yeah. Or to clarify, we have some adjacent, like, some adjacent, mostly nutritionists that tend to find us as well because it's so similar to therapy, like in the on the accounting side, management side. But yeah, so yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very very similar. Yeah. My answer is if you feel comfortable with uh, the mechanics, like if you enjoy numbers and enjoy doing it, then you should learn how to do it properly and you can DIY until the point where you get you're so busy that something needs to come off your plate. And then just from a financial perspective, it almost always makes sense. Or if you're not going to do it or you hate it, then you need the information, so you need to do it. So like, does that, okay. Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay. I'm gonna think through that. Yeah. I feel like I'm good on my feet, but when I have too much time to prepare, yeah, I'll come up with, I know I'll come up with something. Yeah. Do you use the video, Lindsay? Okay. Got it. No, it's just I'm noticing like my lighting is doing something funky to my hair. So that's that's it. No, it's fine. Like I don't think I can I don't know what I can change here. Like yeah. Here. I do have a light here. Maybe the light is going to help. No. No, it's weird. It's a okay. All right, no light. We're just gonna go. We're gonna go with it. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. What? Yeah. Sure. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think so, and I like to think that my team has the heart of a teacher, right? And I think that's one of the advantages um, of of working with us is that we know how to kind of bridge that gap and come not come down to the right level, so to speak, in the sense that like we're going to start building the blocks over time of financial knowledge so that a therapist can understand what's going on in their business because they should. Yeah, it's such a blind spot where you start your own business, excuse me, and you start your own business and you might know therapy really well, but that doesn't mean you know the business side. And there's just so much to it. You've got to, I truly believe every practice should be profitable because you deserve to make money doing your, your God given talent. Yes. I would say probably number one is just not knowing your numbers. I'm sorry, Lindsay. It's just going to keep coming back. So I would say the I would say the most common mistake is just not knowing your numbers, and it's easy to just put your head in the sand and not really look and think if I don't look, the problem doesn't exist, but not knowing what's going on financially in your business. And so that doesn't mean that you need to become an accountant or become an expert at anything. But if you don't know how much money is coming into the business, if you don't know how much your fixed monthly expenses are, how much your variable expenses are, if you don't know what your bottom line is, you're really doing yourself a disservice and your business as well. Because cash is like the oxygen of a business, it needs it to live. So if you deprive your business of money, it's not going to survive. And that's not good for you, but it's also not good for the community that you serve. So that would be one of the big mistakes that I see often. I've got a lot more. How many do you want? So many. Okay. Mistake number two, I would say not saving for taxes. Taxes are inevitable. Life and death and taxes are two certainties in life. And so from the very beginning, you've got to be saving for taxes. And one of the reasons this often happens is if someone's transitioning from being an employee to being a business owner, when you're an employee, the taxes are already taken out of your paycheck, right? And your employer remits those to the government. All is well. You might owe a little bit at the end of the year, but nothing crazy. But when you're a business owner, depending on the legal entity, you may not have paid anything in taxes. And so you're taking money home thinking, oh, this is all mine. But really, it's not, right? 25%, 30%, 40% of that might actually be the government's money. And so it's one of those cases, too, where you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not thinking ahead and planning for that because that is coming. At some point, you're going to owe those taxes. And I'd much rather someone be prepared for it. Even if they're just a little bit short, it's still better than in your second year of business catching up from the mistake of the first year and trying to get ahead for year two. That's so hard. So planning from the beginning. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And you're not paying the estimated taxes. And even with a payment plan, right? So sometimes if you have a big payment owed and you don't have enough money, you can set up a payment plan, but that's going to take you years to pay down. And so it's just this vicious cycle where it just gets harder and harder. So planning that from the beginning is always a good recommendation. I also think one of the mistakes I see often is waiting too long to get help, and that's not necessarily in accounting, although it certainly does apply. But when starting a business, it's kind of natural to want to bootstrap everything and just do it on the cheap, right? You're bootstrapping your own website and you're doing your own billing, and you're doing your own bookkeeping, and answering all the phones, right? And for a certain period of time, that can be really helpful. And it's good to know how to do those things, but there comes a time where you're going to burn out from doing all the things. And financially, it's actually more efficient for you to give those tasks to someone else. Like if you're returning calls 2 days later because you don't have time, just paying someone $15, $20 an hour to answer calls either live or return phone calls within a couple of hours, like that's just going to be money well spent because it's going to increase your number of clients, it's going to increase your revenue coming into the business, and decrease the time it takes you to do that. I agree. Sure. Yeah, and in this day and age, in this virtual world, it's so easy to get a virtual assistant that's not even going to be full time for you, right? You might hire someone 5 hours a week, but if you are charging $150 per session, and that may be high for some areas, low for some areas, but if you're charging $150 per session and hiring someone again at $20 an hour gets you even one additional client on your calendar, like you've made a lot of money in that time. So freeing you up to see additional clients and then just also getting that revenue in, same thing. The same can apply certainly to your accounting, right? If you're DIYing it and missing stuff, missing deductions, filing your tax return wrong, that can be really costly to fix. Whereas I've seen it plenty of times where it would have been cheaper to do it right the first time with a professional than to fix the mistake. But a website is an example I like because I am very crappy at updating my website. That is not one of my talents. And so I might spend 5 hours working on something and my awesome admin will go do it in 20 minutes. So I should not have been spending my time doing that, right? Like that was not efficient. It really is. And that's not to say that you shouldn't know how to make a minor update on your website, but that doesn't mean you need to know all the inner workings of it. Like that's not an efficient use of your time or my time, in my case my time. But it's also not something that I'm never going to go start a website company because I'm not good at it. And so so trusting the professionals to do their work is a good idea here. Yeah, usually they're going to be just a professional is going to be much more efficient at it too. Yeah. All right, I'm going to give you one more. I think it's very, very common when going from solo practice owner to group practice, paying that first hire too much. I've seen it over and over and over again. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen that. And it comes from such a place of kindness and wanting to lift others up and do right by other people, right? It comes from a place of, I've worked for someone else and I hardly made anything and it didn't feel good. And so I want to give them as much as I possibly can. So it comes from a very good place. But when adding one clinician, typically You don't need more physical space if you even have an office anymore. You need very little additional overhead. You might have a EHR subscription, an email subscription, right? Like those costs are minimal, and you typically are not going to need to all of a sudden add a full-time admin just because you add one person. So you're probably still taking the calls, doing some of the intake, doing the billing, but that's not sustainable long term, right? So while those numbers might work for the first clinician, if you're not thinking of where am I ending up in 1, 3, 5 years, and what support am I going to need to sustain that kind of a team, you're paying someone too much because you haven't built in the full-time admin, the biller, the additional physical space, and all the other pieces that come along with having a group practice. And it's very fair for that to be paid for by other people's money, right? You shouldn't be having to work harder to pay for everyone else's overhead and be losing money on each session that your clinicians see. So. Well, so there's a lot of different ways that clinicians can be compensated, but just generally speaking, for a large group practice, we look for no more than 55% of gross income to be going to clinician payroll. And so there's sometimes, like right now it's a very tight labor market. It's very hard to hire. We're seeing that number sneak up, but that usually means it's going to be reduced somewhere else. And what I mean by that is not every single person needs to be at 55%, right? But you're going to have some more experienced people who might be a little bit higher, but typically that's going to also be offset with less experienced people at lower rates. Because if everyone on your team is at an 80% split, there just is not any room for profit. Like there literally is no room. And chances are that you're losing money on each session. So average that's kind of where we like to see that, including payroll tax too. Yeah, that includes payroll tax. Yes. So if they were a contractor where no taxes are withheld, they might be at a 55% split. But if they're an employee, they might be at a 50% split because after payroll taxes, that costs you about 55. Yeah. And if you wanted to add benefits, you might want to even adjust that a little bit as well. Right away. I would say reverse engineer your lifestyle. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when we onboard a new client, we'll ask them like, how much money are you looking to take home per month from the business? And a lot of times they don't actually know what that is. And there's always the I want to be taking home 50,000 per month, right? And that's all well and good. But like, what do you actually need? Like, what does it take to sustain your household, to pay your mortgage, your rent, your car, your kids' activities, all the minimum things. There's a kind of nice to have and good to have, right? Those are two different numbers, but a lot of times people don't know either one of those. And so if we start there, we can do the math on what does that mean in your business? How many sessions per month, per day, per week, right? Like we can break it down in a really granular way that doesn't seem so overwhelming. So we just need the information for that. I was just reading a book by Tim Ferriss. I think it's 4-Hour Work Week, and he talks about like what's your dollar amount per day that you need to survive. And I thought that was really interesting because I typically will have looked at it by month, but even per day, if you need whatever it may be, $125 per day, like that's not overwhelming at all. Can I go make $125 today? Yeah, I can definitely do that, right? So I don't know that's not necessarily my number, but I just thought it was an interesting way to look at it. But so if we can just focus in on that, then that also tells us like what is the next thing that you need to do today in your business, right? So if you need, for example, 100 sessions per month, and you're currently aiming or you're currently projecting you're going to have 75, then okay, I've got to do some marketing activities today. Like we need to get more people in. And if you're projecting for 125, then your activity might be, okay, it's time to hire. Like who's going to see all these clients? So knowing what that threshold is can be helpful in so many different ways. Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking to a client a couple of weeks ago, and she is a solo practice owner that wants to stay that way, and is consistently full every week, always full. So we were talking about, okay, well, she would like to be taking home a little bit more money. And a year ago, that wasn't the case. She wasn't always full. But now that she always is, like, okay, how about you raise your rate $20 an hour? Like that, look, and we can look at the numbers, look at the difference this does when you don't have employees. Like you can see more clients or raise your rate. Like those are kind of the main two things. You can certainly control expenses. Like that's always a good thing. But there comes a point where there's only so many more places to cut without you spending a whole lot of time doing something manually. And so, just knowing, hey, I want more. How do I get there? Like that's a fun exercise to do as well. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think that's a limiting belief, right? Of I I don't think people will pay. And it is possible that if you raise your rate, some clients will leave, right? It is possible. But then they will likely be replaced with clients who also equally need you and can afford to pay your fee. And of course, like I'm probably a little bit less emotional. I'm an accountant. Like that's just kind of my viewpoint. But to me, like part of our job as the accounting team is to say like, hey, you deserve to make more money. You have one more year of experience than last year, right? Like you, and also to normalize, like it's okay to make a good living running your private practice. Like that is a very okay thing to do. You deserve to be able to pay for everything and then some. If you want to go on a nice vacation, you should be able to do that. Like you are very talented, you're very educated, and there has to be profit in your practice, or else why are we doing this? Yeah. Yeah, so I think in the very beginning, the bootstrapping is not a bad thing, right? I think if you have a financially focused mind, like if you can get the work done and you will do it consistently, learning how to do your own books is really a good thing to understand how the mechanics work, what's taxable, what's not taxable, like how all the different pieces work. I think that will serve you well in the long run. So in that case, if you're really good at that, I would still always team up with an accountant for your taxes. I just think as a business owner, there's just a lot more complication to your taxes. And I've just seen too many errors to suggest that anyone try to DIY. Like if you're an employee, TurboTax all day long, like go for it. No judgment here. But if you have your own business, I really think you should work with an accountant for tax prep. So at least there's an annual opportunity for someone to look over what you've done, say, hey, you're doing this piece correctly, or this has changed, and kind of fix things. However, as you grow, I really think there's a tipping point. Certainly when as you move into group practice, right? Because there's a lot more complication. There's payroll, and there's just a lot of things that can go wrong with payroll. But you're spending a lot more time managing the business, and having something like that off your plate where you're still getting reports, you still have access to everything, you still know what's going on with your business, but you're not necessarily the one doing all the work. I think at the point of group practice, that should always be on the plan, unless you're someone who really, really, really enjoys, and like you were a CPA in a previous life. Like then maybe you knock yourself out, right? Or your spouse is an accountant. Like then that might be a little bit different. But I think it's always beneficial to learn how to do that, just so that you know what you're looking at. But then then just give it over to someone else as soon as you can afford to, because a bookkeeper and accountant is going to be able to do things more efficiently, but probably more accurately as well. Yeah. Yeah. So, Lindsay, can I reverse this on you and ask you when do you think it's time to when should someone DIY and when should they outsource? Okay. Hope for the best, right? Yeah, agree. I think I have two. So I would say, don't be an ostrich. Take your head out of the sand and just look at what's going on. There is so much power in that knowledge and knowing what's happening in your business. So I would say face it head on. I would love for any practice owner to be looking at their numbers at least monthly, because there's a lot of people who will just wait till the end of the year and then put everything together, spend the whole weekend putting everything together. And that's good enough for taxes, right? So can you get your taxes done that way? Yes, absolutely. For compliance purposes, you can. But you're missing out on all the important data that your business is trying to give you if you're not looking at it on a regular basis. And if you have that information, it's just going to help you make data driven decisions. And in the business, that's a really good thing. And I would also say, so my second piece of advice is, a lot of times when someone comes in to work with us, or reaches out to us for a consultation, they'll say something along the lines of, I don't understand what my current accountant is doing. They're telling me, like, don't worry about it, I'll just take care of it. And I don't know what that means. Like, is it handled? Is it not handled? Do I need to do something? So I would say, whether you work with my team or someone else, like, look for someone who's going to be a good fit for you. And if you don't have the good fit right now, talk to someone else, right? There's a lot of different accountants out there. And you just, ideally, you want to work with someone who's going to spend the time explaining things to you in a way that makes sense to you, that's going to meet you where you are. And that might cost more. It probably will. And if you just have a tax preparer and you need to reach out throughout the year, that's probably going to cost you as well. But having that person in your corner is just such it should be an asset. You shouldn't dread reaching out to that person. And once you have that person, talk to them before you make big financial decisions. So before you open up a retirement plan, talk to them, see what the tax consequences are, or tax benefits. Like, is there something else that might work better for you before you get a loan or buy a building or even sell your business? Like, talk to your accountant so that they can help guide you through those big decisions, and maybe hopefully shine a light on perhaps something that was a blind spot otherwise to you. Yes, yes. Like, it's always worth reaching out to them. And that's why a lot of accounting firms, including mine, have gone to a flat monthly fee model, right? And it's in part because we don't want anyone to hesitate to reach out to us because it's going to cost them to talk to us. Like, talk to your team. That's exactly what they're there for. Yes, yes. Yes. So I would say go to greenoakaccounting.com. You can find out a whole lot about our services. You can even schedule a free consultation with my team. I also have a podcast called Therapy for Your Money, where I talk about all things money and finance for private practice. So there's Lindsay, you were a guest recently. So we have lots of great topics like compensation, tax saving tips. Like, there's just a whole lot of different things that you can get on there as well. I hope not. We're really nice. We're very, very nice. Thanks for having me, Lindsay. It was a pleasure.